Hello, listeners, and welcome again to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership, clarity, communication, impact. These are all words that go together, and yet many leaders and managers often struggle to achieve one or even all of those things. My guest today, Kevin Kepple, is a transformational business coach who helps leaders with these things. He helps them to create that clarity in their business, achieve impact with their leadership, and ultimately more freedom and autonomy in their own lives as well.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Kevin, thank you very much for taking the time out of your morning. I think it's quite early for you right now, so appreciate that.
Yeah, a little early, but I get up early, so it's all good. I like to get it rolling in the dark when everybody else is sleeping.
Nice. If I hand over to you to introduce yourself, tell listeners what your background is and how you've ended up doing what you do today.
Sure, that's a great question. Let's start at the beginning. I was born. I woke up and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and it was all good. Right? Said no one ever, or maybe somebody, but definitely wasn't me. But when we were in the green room, chatting before we kicked off the interview, we were sharing a little bit of your story, and it parallels a lot of what I did. I went to college and got out of college and worked for a large corporation, and I had some some great leaders around me, and then some that could have had room to grow too. And I just remember being really frustrated and just thinking to myself, there has to be a better way to influence people, and because it definitely didn't make me want to show up any better than I was. It wanted to make me hide, because I felt like it was almost abusive sometimes. And I could have been better in scenarios too. I wasn't an angel or perfect, but I was just really confused a lot because it felt like such a disconnect. Like, why would you break somebody down and hammer them into the ground almost, as opposed to lifting them up? And so I left that company that I was just talking about, but that was kind of the common theme in a couple of the companies I worked for. And more or less my roles that I were in were different types of like professional sales roles. I worked as, a director of a strategic alliance program. And then I worked in financial services and just really helping people, come together and get what they want, which I love doing. And then that way my salary's not set too. But I was working with a coach, and he was really great. He had been in the Secret Service here in the U.S. for about 30 years, and he could look right through you, kind of guy. Like, it was so good. Like, you just keep talking, you tell him everything, because he was so good at being stoic and intense. And tell me what you like about your job was the great question he asked me. I was like, well, you know what? I love this and I love that and blah, 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 all these things, right? And he's like, hold on just a second. And he goes, I don't even think you like your job. What are you talking about? And he's like, man, you're not even looking at me. Your body language changed. Your tone changed. Like your arms are crossed. You're getting all these cues that like you're just not being. I don't think you're lying, but I just don't think that you're connecting to your truth, or something like that. And I really kind of created an insight inside of me to a huge shift. I'm like, man, maybe I'm not happy. And what I really like doing is helping other people get what they wanted, but not necessarily in the day-to-day things I was doing. So I was hiding from a lot, not getting to grow as fast as I wanted. And, Stephen Covey's got that great book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's like, make sure your ladder's leaned up against the right wall. If you're climbing the ladder of success, make sure it's a ladder you want to be on. And so long story short, my coach was like, man, I think you'd be a phenomenal coach. And, long story short, I finally listened to his advice after, a couple of months of resistance. And I went and worked for a really large multi-billion-dollar company here. It's actually based in Dallas where I'm at. And I was a national sales coach and trainer for them for a few years. And so I got to coach people and train people all day, every day, and really high-performing people too in a lot of cases. And so it was really powerful. I got to really understand how to help people, be more the things that make them really, outstanding and wonderful without making them feel like less. And I think that's a really cool gift to share with people. And so I stepped away from that company years ago and started my own thing. And now I've grown and have some coaches who work with me and support me, and I get to help different types of leaders that really want to step into whatever their version of amazing is, and go out and impact the world in a positive and profound way. So life is good.
Pleased to hear, I suppose, that something good came out of the bad experience, at least.
Yeah. Mining for diamonds in the hard. But,
Indeed.
I feel like, tension is good because that stress creates growth. If it was easy, then, there'd be a different story. And I don't think it'd be as powerful or as clear of what I want and how I want to do it.
So what do you think then has been your biggest professional challenge through all of that?
That's easy. That's me. The common denominator in all of my problems is me, right? I'm always there. And really just believing the stories of the mind that aren't true are the danger spots, and taking actions or not taking actions based on whatever the stories are. And I think one of the most powerful things we can all do is to learn to question the stories that the mind gives us. And the mind, it's the ego, right? It's not malicious. It's just trying to keep us safe. And anything unknown is dangerous to the ego. And the only way that I create anything new, though, is to go into the unknown. But that feels risky to the ego. But really, when you just question those stories of the mind, not even in an effort to change it, just to question it so that the mind will change on its own. And that's absolutely possible. And like, I'm not, infallible now by any means. I still can, go down the rabbit hole the wrong way. And I think that's why it's so crucial that you're really intentional about making sure that it's not just the mind you're relying on, but also, your heart and your gut, like that heart coherence and, the inner knowing that we have, and leaning into that, and then using the mind for the reason, the logic, and the planning, of course. But I want to tap into the infinite parts of me too. Yeah,
it's very helpful. I think very powerful even in having that self-awareness to ask yourself those questions, isn't it? And sometimes you might not expect the answers, I think.
Yeah, but that's the genius that you create with that, is just being open, like that kind of what if. And I think, learning to detach from the outcome is one of the most crucial skills of anybody, because if I'm fixed on a specific outcome, that's just an expectation. And then, how do I know what I want? I can create preferences, but if it's an expectation, then there's no way to win, because if I do it, I get what I expected. Big deal. And then if I don't, I failed. And it's like really dangerous when you do that with other people. Expect you to be this way, do this thing, and then they don't, and they failed you, or they do, and you're like, yeah, that's what I expected, right? And it's just dangerous because expectations restrict autonomy. And freedom's like one of the most fundamental desires that we have as humans. Like we got it. Everybody in the world pretty much had their autonomy restricted in some form over the past few years. And it's really, people push back in ways that are detrimental to themselves quite often when that happens. And so, just really understanding that, it's okay. I don't need all the answers. I just need to, know what I want and take appropriate action and, reflect intelligently on that action.
I mean, obviously we all know we've had our freedoms restricted at various points in the last couple of years. But while you were talking, it kind of occurred to me, we've talked about the Great Resignation quite a few times in other episodes, and it's been in the press constantly, I'm sure, over there as it has here. I wonder how much of that Great Resignation then could be the result of people exercising that freedom in other ways when they maybe couldn't in the usual ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, restriction of autonomy is just a form of force. And anytime you force anything, there's going to be counterforce. If my front door is locked and I kick it open, like if I could, I don't even know if I could, but let's say that I could, it's probably going to hurt my leg, my hip, my body because of the counterforce. I'm going to break the door jam, break the door. And so there's repercussions anytime you force anything. And there's no power in that. It's much more powerful if you can inspire people, to do the, things that you're looking for them to do.
Absolutely. Push versus pull, isn't it? Of good leadership, I think, it's inspiring people to act on their own, isn't it? You're not trying to push them uphill or pull them over the edge of the cliff or whatever other kind of horrible cliche I can come up with in my mind right now. Let's move on from those.
Yeah, but that was a great word you used, inspire, because I think that's what really great leaders do. They inspire and they empower. Because if you tell me what to do, you're just telling me what to do. Like that's once again, restricted autonomy, but inspiration. It's like stimulate me to action. And then if you empower me, you give me like knowledge or tools or whatever of what to do with said stimulation. I think that's pretty powerful.
One of your former presidents, I think, Eisenhower, used to say great leadership is getting someone to do something because they think they want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was a powerful guy, and obviously a powerful general, powerful president. And he was, not to be political, but, he was a big, proponent, like foreshadowing the war machine. Don't create like a war machine that's constantly in conflict, because then it has to be fed. And 60 years later, however long ago that was, I was like, he was pretty on the money with that.
Yeah, an insightful guy, definitely. All right, well, let's move on from there. So tell us more about on what you do today and how you help leaders create clarity in their businesses and achieve impact with their leadership and obtain better freedom, more autonomy in their lives.
Sure, that's a great question. The first place that I start with anyone or with myself or where anybody that may be listening should start, if you want something new, like the first question you need to ask is like, what do I want? And I feel like so many people, if you ask them, hey, what do you want? They'll give you this blank stare. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like for dinner? Like, no, like, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want to create? Like, what do you want to do with your life? Like today, what do you want? Like going to the gym. What do you want to do in the gym? Like, if I don't know what I want, it's going to make it really hard to know if I get it. If I don't know what I want, what action do I take to go get it? And, I love to read fiction. So I read the internet a lot. Right. And I read about a study on the internet. It was like way back in the day. Max Planck actually did it, but it had people in the desert and it had people in like the mountains somewhere, and they didn't know, like they weren't familiar with the terrain, so they couldn't identify landmarks, and they didn't have a compass or a map. And they set this group off from point A in both locations and like go to point B. And both, every time they did the study, without clear direction, people just walked in circles and they went back to where they started. And like, that's what we do. Like, if we don't have a clear direction, if we don't know what we want, like, it's really hard to know what action is appropriate. And then, the second question is, why? Why do I want this? And the why is like our Simon Sinek, right? Start with why, but it's like, how am I mixing generosity into this thing that I want? The what I want is more about my passion, which passion is great. I need to have passion with what I'm doing, but that can be fairly selfish too, right? It can run out. But when I have generosity mixed in with the why, like that stuff fuels you, because that's purpose, that's impact, that's beyond you. And that's what we came here to do. We came here to grow as much as we can and give it all away in service to others, right? So we can just create more for everyone. And so what do you want and why do you want it? So simple. And it's, there's a more in-depth process I take people through to get to those answers, kind of like the Russian nesting dolls, right? There's always another answer in there. But it's really great, but it's really crucial too that you stay away from that third question, the how. That's where we get sideways. Well, how? And then we start trying to figure it all out in our minds. Like, well, if you knew how, you would have already done it. But Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the greatest books that's ever been written. He survived Auschwitz, horrific conditions, maybe the worst that's ever existed. I don't know, but one of the worst at least. And he made it because he had a why. And he has this great quote, when your why is big enough, the how will emerge. And, just detaching from the outcome, giving up the need to know. And so really just spending a lot of time on that is where we start. And then really work with people to help them understand what their greatest levels of performance are going to look like through an assessment that we use, that I've used for thousands of clients now. And then we, just work on different things like how to maximize creativity, how to let go of the things that aren't serving you, like limiting beliefs, and really align with whatever your version of truth is. And that's really kind of the beginning, at least.
Made me chuckle, I must say, when you mentioned about what do you want for dinner, because that's a daily conversation I have.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Problems, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's like, I don't care, whatever you want. And they're like, you name 8 things. I don't want any of those things, though. Okay, so what you don't want. We have that established, right? So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, I guess in theory that's going to be a bigger list, isn't it? So by the time you've got that full list of what you don't want,
what's left?
Yeah. There you go. Process of elimination.
Yeah. I've just not eaten before, but which is wild because I love to eat. I'm like, I just can't even think about it. I'll just, protein shake. Just make it easy, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I think finding your why, Simon Sinek's the famous one, isn't he? But it comes down to the purpose, doesn't it? I think, what's your purpose for leading? What are you trying to achieve? What do you want to help others achieve? really important approach that you've got there.
Yeah, well, that's usually, weave throughout. It's like, okay, now that you're creating all this clarity for yourself and more impact, you can be able to show up in a more powerful way. How are we going to transfer this to other people? And more importantly, how are we going to inspire them to transfer this to the people behind them? And that's a really powerful cascading effect of leadership, because a lot of people just, you don't know what you don't know. And the mentors that I've had and the great leaders that I've had around me have, quantum leap me down the road. It's so great when you have a great mentor who can just give you years of knowledge in a short amount of time. And you don't have to even have a human to do that. You can use books, right? It's, somebody's genius distilled down into a few pages. And so I love to read. I read constantly, and I'm so grateful for the ability to read and all the great books that are out there. And it's so wild, I ask people, what are you reading? And usually people have something, but often it's like, I don't really like to read. I'm like, but you know how, right? And there's a great quote from Mark Twain, and something to the effect of, people who can read but choose not to have little to no advantage over people who can't read at all. I'm like, well, so when you don't read and you can read, right, you're making the choice to be illiterate. And that seems to be pretty wild if you want more, but you're not really taking aligned actions. Then we need to really get clear on what you do, truly want.
Yeah, certainly an odd decision, that one, isn't it? Something else that I know you speak about is the influence equation and also transformational leadership. So for the benefit of the listeners, can you explain what those two concepts are?
Sure. So John Maxwell, like the leadership godfather, pretty much, I feel like so many of the leadership books now, it's all just derivative of John Maxwell, right? But he's really powerful because he can take, any idea, especially complex ones, and make it really simple. So it shows a deep understanding. And he said leadership is influence, and I definitely agree with that. But the influence equation, like my opinion, if you want to influence the behavior of others, it's kind of three things. It's trust, connection, and then vision. And I know when I was a new leader, I started at the back, and that's why it didn't work. I would just share the vision. I'm like, here's where we're going, go get it. And, people weren't connected to it and probably didn't trust me because they didn't feel like I cared about what they wanted. And so, starting at the beginning, it's trust, right? How do we build trust? We build trust by being authentic. Number one, as leaders, being, authentic to, who we say we are. And, are my actions consistent with my beliefs and values, with the company's values? And then, that helps people, they know what they're going to get, and it's consistent, and they don't have to guess who you're going to be. And that, starts to build trust, but also empathy and selflessness and accountability and decisiveness, all those great leadership traits. They show people that they're safe. And when people feel safe, that means they'll actually, be vulnerable, which means they'll be creative. And, as a leader, you're not infallible. Steve Jobs said it so brilliantly. We don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do. And, I don't have all the answers. I'm really great at some things, and some things I'm not, and that's okay. And I don't need to be good at everything. I just need to be really good at, the things that, I've chosen to serve others with. And connection is, constantly reinforced through our actions too, and helping people get connected to your vision. One of the simplest ways to do that, hey, here's where we're going as a company. Here's the purpose. Here's why we're here. And here's what it means to you as an individual. Here's how it helps you get what you want. Because that's what everybody's more or less curious about. What's in it for me? And everybody internally is kind of asking questions of the leader. It's like, number one, do you like me? Because if I feel like the leader doesn't like me, it's, very clear when you can feel that, and it doesn't feel safe at all. They're like, okay, if I don't feel safe, then I'm in fight or flight or freeze or faint, right? Those kind of the options. And none of those are creation. And, the second question is do you like me? And the second one's that, do you like me? It's kind of can I trust you? And the second one's can you help me get what I want? Is what's important to me important to you? And I think, again, our actions and behaviors either, align with that or, move away from that. So it's really crucial that we're showing up in ways that are conducive to, creating and maintaining trust and connection. And that's when, you can share a vision with people when they trust you and they feel connected to you, that they'll co-create with you. And that's when y'all, get to co-elevate together. And co-elevation has to be the goal. Because if I want to create any powerful team, any powerful organization, we have to grow as individuals and we have to grow as a team. We have to do both of those. That's how we get, massive movement forward towards whatever it is, our dreams, purpose, whatever it is.
Particularly important as well, that step about making the individuals feel part of that, recognizing, that they are there, they are individuals, and they are part of the team, and the team won't succeed without each of them. I think a lot of leaders sometimes fall into that trap, don't they, where they view the team as a whole and they don't consider individual priorities that might be within that team.
Yeah, that word recognize that you used is so powerful. What gets recognized gets improved.
Exactly.
Good or bad.
Indeed. My next question is going to be, what does it take to satisfy that influence equation? But I think you've probably at least partly answered it already.
Yeah, I did, but I can reiterate really quick. It's owning the powerful leadership traits is a good place to start. And I think selflessness is a huge one. It's putting other people first, and again, being authentic. But decisiveness is a really crucial leadership trait. I feel like, especially newer leaders can miss. And decisiveness is the ability to make decisions quickly and effectively. Because I can make the best decision in the world, but if it's not timely, then it does me no good. If it takes me 2 years to make a great decision that needed to be made in a week or a day or an hour, then I'm outdated and I've regressed, then progressed. And I think accountability, just ownership of your actions, ownership of your decisions. Like, hey, I think the best leaders are the ones that, people don't even know they're there half the time. They don't take, they take credit for things that went wrong and, let the people have the credit for the things that go right. And man, like that's the kind of people that, are championed and followed and celebrated. And man, I just think that there's so many missed opportunities when you don't recognize constantly the behavior of people, because everybody likes to be seen. That's one of the most fundamental needs as humans, to be seen and to see others. And when you recognize people for, their genius or their, whatever they're creating, then that shows them that you really see them. But if, all you're thinking about is yourself, it's going to be hard for you to see that.
Yeah, good summary and a lot of different points to respond to there. One that I think that really needs underlining is decisiveness and how we define that, because I think it's quite often misunderstood. Decisiveness means fast decisions, which is true, but only half true, because the other half that's missing is what you said, which is effective. Yeah. Anyone can make a quick decision, right? That's easy. I'll just pick one at random. It doesn't matter.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, I can't remember who the author was, but there's something I was reading a few years back about quality decision making and the aspects that go into that. And there is the element, as you say, about time. In theory, you could make 100% perfect decision every time, but it might take you 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years to get there. And what actually matters is that timeliness, and that's a more important criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are built different too. Like the Gallup's Clifton Strengths assessment we talked a little bit about before we started. That's one of the tools that I love to use. And one of the strengths is called activator, and activators are more like ready, fire, aim. And that's definitely been a successful approach for me. But like my brother has deliberative at number 1, which is very methodical and stoic. So he doesn't take action until he's assessed all the risk. And then he executes really quickly. And so it can look like he's not moving as fast, but he rarely makes mistakes. And so it's just a different style. And I'm really grateful for him, because if I want to do any deep research, I was buying a mountain bike. I'm like, hey, do you know anything about these ghost bikes from Germany? He's like, I don't, but let me call you back. And a couple hours later and lots of research, he's like, man, they're great. Yeah, you'll like this bike, but this is the one you want. Thank you, because I would more like probably buy the first. Maybe I'd make it to the second one, but yeah. Really cool to have, support like that and to know what you're good at and, what other people are better at. Yeah,
definitely. And that's another really important skill for leaders, isn't it? Is recognizing and leveraging all those different skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not good at everything and I don't pretend to be. If I do, then we're going to be in trouble if, I'm the one who's, coding the website. Like it's going to look pretty broken most of the time, but that's okay. That's not my genius.
Yeah, we can sum it up with that lovely cliche of jack of all trades is a master of none.
Ooh, that's a good one. A very good one.
Is it? I don't know. It feels overused, but maybe that's just me.
I think we can bring it back. It's been a while. I haven't heard that in a long time, actually. And so, because it's a classic for a reason, because it's pretty true. Like I can be good at a lot of things, but I can not be, mastery level at everything for sure.
Let's talk a bit more about leadership then, a bit more specifically. So from all your career experience so far and from all the clients you work with over the years, what are the biggest leadership lessons that you've taken from all of that?
I think one of the simplest is to be really intentional about being kind more than right. It's like I've never walked away from anybody who's right about everything and felt really good about myself or them or our relationship. But people who are very intentional about being kind, just really grateful for them. And, kindness is, grace and respect for other people, for their ideas. And I think, very naturally leaders are going to be either better at relationships or results, kind of one of the two. And for me, relationships come way more naturally than the results, but the best leaders, have a great equilibrium between the two. And so, very intentional on my side about bringing up the results and kind of getting those in balance. And I just think it's so overlooked too. It's like, well, no, this is how I am. Like, okay, cool. But what does better look like? And, you think about any great leader, like what do they have? They have a high degree of confidence and they have a high degree of warmth of some sort that makes you feel, good when you're in their presence or good when you watch them or whatever. Like, easy example is like, Oprah Winfrey, right? Super successful here in the US and in the world, right? And she's really, really warm and bright and easy to watch because she's fun and she's big and but she's also really confident. And she'll ask like hard, challenging questions. And I don't know why she popped into my head, but I was thinking about Hawaii and I know she has a big house there earlier, so maybe that's it. But, and just a leader that, you've ever really resonated with that inspired and empowered you. If you think about it, they were probably really competent, but they were also warm in some way that, if it's all gas and no human, well, that's hard to relate with because I'm a human and I want to be treated with humanity. And I think, Gandhi was brilliant, changed a couple of continents, right? Changed the world, still does. People talk about him all the time. And he has that amazing quote, be the change you want to see. And so often the leaders that I get to work with, if they're struggling, like, like the people, so to speak, right, aren't maybe moving the way they desire, like, okay, well, what do you want, from them that they're not doing? And, I want this. I'm like, okay, are you being that? Because, you're going to attract what you're being, not what you want. And so if, I want you to be a certain way, I better be being that too. Or there's a big disconnect there and it doesn't feel authentic or consistent or any of those other things.
For me, I guess it comes down to leading by example. If you want everyone in the team to show up to meetings on time, then you better be on time yourself, right? If you want all documentation produced to a certain standard, then you better make sure the ones you work on are also to that standard. If you want people to be kind to each other in the office, then you better not be the one shouting at everyone. It's exactly that, isn't it? It's be the change you want to see. It's live the standards that you want others to meet. It's leading by example.
Yeah, it's so simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy. One of the CEOs I get to work with, he's awesome. He's a great guy. He's got a couple hundred people in his company, and we've worked together for years. And when we first started, it's just like, man, I just like getting in there and give him the business. And he was like kind of the old school CEO, and helped him see maybe a little better way that really using his gifts because he's really great with people. And then he changed much for the positive, and he was doing a lot of things right, but now he's doing even more right, and it trickled down all through the company. Everybody's like, just really so nice to come here when I feel like he knows my name even, and I'm nobody here or whatever. And it goes a long way. It's just when you work to see people as people and not as a part in your machine.
No, it's definitely not easy. Yeah, it's I think some people find it easier than others, but I think a big part of it comes from the types of organisation you've worked in before and the way leadership was done there. Because I think, again, it's something that I think this is changing gradually, but a lot of companies, you don't really get taught how to do this. You just get pushed in at the deep end. Very similar to the story you told at the beginning, very similar to my own experience. And so what tends to happen then is you just replicate the leadership you've had.
Yeah. There's a great book called Wanting by Luke Burgess. And he talks about mimetic theory. And mimetic theory is basically once basic needs are met, desire is social. And so we learn to want what other people are wanting. And the models that we have are either social media or, like the leaders that we have. And if my model is abusive and abrasive, then that's what I learn is the way. And that's a hard way to lead, because you're not going to create, anything beyond the immediate, because as soon as you go away, like, there's no motivation to continue on. There's no intrinsic motivation. And without intrinsic motivation, you're giving away so much horsepower.
What we were talking about earlier, there's none of that inspiration. There's no shared goals, shared vision.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm not excited to be here and I don't see what's in it for me, then I'm just doing a job. I'm not going to be innovative or creative or go any farther than I have to go. You're going to have trouble getting me to do, what I'm supposed to do, much less go above and beyond and, bring in new things and collaborate with other people. And that's how you create, if it's a company of 100, you create, 100 different kind of silos inside one company. That's really dangerous. And it's hard to move forward if everybody's pulling a different direction.
Definitely. Another question, slightly off topic, but it just occurred to me as you were talking. What's your view? What are your thoughts on this quiet quitting concept? Because I don't want to preempt, but to me, it seems like, when did it become a bad thing to show up and fulfill your contractual obligations?
I don't know. I was actually another CEO that I get to work with. She had shared something around that, and we were talking about that. And it's so wild. Like, if you want to quit, just quit. Like, but that seems so painful to intentionally not do anything. And like, I think it's really dangerous for you physically, mentally, emotionally, because when you're blocking energy like that, it has to go somewhere. And that's basically creating this like chaotic energy inside of you. And it's just resistance. Like, at all moments we can accept or we can resist. And when I resist, I create tension, and that tension gets backed up in some form of stress, because my body gives me a stress response. And then I bump up against somebody for something that's probably not a big deal, but because my cup is already full of stress, I spill out all over them, and, anger or whatever. And then you wonder why all your relationships are hard, or you feel disconnected, because you're not connected to yourself. You're completely disconnected from, everything. Because if you're quiet quitting, you're probably thinking about, how you've been wronged in the past, or you're going to be wronged in the future. And, if I'm in the past or the future constantly, the future gives me anxiety if I stay stuck there. And if I'm stuck in the past, it's just guilt and depression. And I'm not actually present to my own life. And man, that's the greatest gift we have as humans here on earth, is to get to be life. But we give that away if we, constantly insist on time traveling. So long answer to your short question. I think, we have a responsibility to grow as much as we can and give it to others. And quiet quitting is the opposite of that. And that's probably why, if you feel like you're quiet quitting, I would imagine how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if I'm quitting professionally, where else am I quitting? I bet the health is suffering. I bet you're suffering financially, emotionally, in your relationships. But don't feel bad. Like, if you're never getting the result you want, no problem. Just do better. That's all you got to do. Like, don't be perfect. Just do better, because perfect is, there's no perfection, but there is better.
What role do you think leadership has to play in solving that problem?
I think just being intentional about all the things we talked about, showing up for people and checking in with them, and like, what do you need? Simple question. And man, I think one of the greatest questions you can ask people, you want to connect with people on a human level, just sit down and look at them in the eye and say, hey, Bob, what's present for you today, Bob? What's present for you? That's such a great question. What's present for you? And, most people have never been asked anything like that. And it's a great question, because, what's present for you today? Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a little hungry, like, I'm excited, and what are you looking forward to? What are you really excited about? And I think, we could all do so much better every day by just answering 3 questions. It's like, okay, what do I want to focus on today? What do I need to let go of? Really important one there. What do I need to let go of? And then, like, what am I grateful for? Because gratitude is an intentional focus on, things that I love. And whatever I focus on, I create more of. Whatever I focus on expands, however you want to say it. If I'm focused on gratitude, then I instantly have more things to be grateful for. And we hear gratitude mentioned all the time. And so it probably gets overlooked, right? Because it's like whatever's familiar gets ignored. But, there's a reason, like the quote you shared earlier, there's a reason it gets repeated. But there's a lot of power in that. There's so much power in gratitude. and walk around being grateful for a day. Watch how your life changes.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Definitely. Right. My next two questions are kind of interrelated. There's one negative, one positive. I always like to get the negative one out of the way first, and then we can end on a high. So what was the biggest mistake you've ever seen a leader make?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if it's the biggest, but one that I've seen repeated is just telling people what to do, as opposed to just asking questions and inspiring and empowering people. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Sure, we have goals and things we need to accomplish, but going back to the quote we had earlier, like if you hired people to do a job, let them prove you right, that you picked, a powerful person, as opposed to you just telling them what to do. And I think it's like, ontological integrity is a great word. It's like honoring your words as you speak, to yourself and other people, and just being, really kind again. And like, where is kindness in business? Like, where is it not? Like, who do you want to do business with? I want to do business with kind people that are creating from a place of love, not people that are right about everything, that are just trying to resist and maintain through fear and oppression, suppression, whatever.
Yeah, that's probably a unique answer, I think. As you said earlier, it comes down to the simplest things quite a lot. And just because they're simple doesn't mean they're easy, as you said. So yeah, great one.
Well, Leonardo da Vinci, right? Obviously a polymath. The dude was a genius in multiple disciplines. I was actually just looking at The Last Supper again, and like, that's amazing. He was a genius, engineer. He could do all these things. And he has a phenomenal quote. He said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." I'm like, yeah, that's really impactful, because simple ideas are remembered, simple ideas are repeated. And, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it.
Yeah, very well put. Can't argue with the masters, can we? Okay, positive question then. So what's the opposite, really? What's the greatest success that you've seen a leader achieve? What's the best thing you've seen them do?
I think it's really simple again, just being intentional about the skill of using the skill and developing the skill of choosing love over fear. At every moment we have two options. Like if you think about every action you've ever taken, it came from one of those two places. It was either fear-based or based in love. And fear can be manifested in many different forms, like anger, guilt, shame, pride, apathy, whatever. And love, like unconditional love, not romantic love necessarily. Just a love for humanity, a love for, creating more. And unconditional love, it's a great skill. And the cool thing about unconditional love, like, it doesn't mean you have to like, right? I don't have to like you to love you. And I think that's why we have in-laws, right? So we can practice that. That's a joke. My in-laws are cool. I really love them. But, we're all a work in progress. And, it's like, I love you, not I love you if, but I just love you. And, I love the fact that, we're here having a human experience together. And so whatever it is, let's go get it together, and let's do it out of respect, kindness, and love.
I have nothing to add to that. Totally agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. To me, there's kind of two sides to a coin in most organizations that are going to see good success. Anyway, it's one side of it is the leadership, and then you flip it over, the other side is the culture of that organization. They're intertwined. They play off each other. One is quite often the result of the other, one way or the other. So what do you think has to be present to develop that kind of powerful, positive culture that is going to have a successful organization as a result?
I think clarity has to be present, a clarity of where we're going and a clarity of who we want to be when we go there and, on our way. And, the very simple way to do that is with values. Do you have values? Does everyone know your values? Is everything that you do run through those values? Hiring, firing, if that has to happen, new jobs that you're taking on, is it in alignment with your values? And you should have personal values too, because if you don't know what's important to you, then you're going to be living somebody else's values, and that's really dangerous. And for me, it's really simple. It's freedom, abundance, grace, and respect. And if I ever get sideways, like, where am I not honoring one or all of these values? And it's usually pretty simple to find it. It's so great because awareness and ego are incompatible. It's, the ego lives in unawareness and the unaware behavior. And, I want to be, present to my life. And so it's really important that I understand what I want that to look like too. So I think that's a really simple way to keep everybody pointed towards types of creations you want to be bringing to manifest in, your business, your world, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Values so important. They drive the way you behave at the end of the day, and culture is derived from behavior ultimately. So, yeah, cool.
Well said.
Well, it's kind of the aggregation, isn't it, of behavior over time, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how you're showing up.
Mm-hmm. What advice then would you give to a first-time leader who's maybe struggling to connect their vision with their people, or vice versa?
Well, for starters, don't take yourself too seriously. Life's meant to be enjoyed, and shouldn't be hard on yourself, because if you're not choosing love with yourself, then you can't give what you don't have. And so just being gentle and graceful with yourself, and then with other people is really important. And just understand everybody's doing the best they can. And when they show up poorly, it's not because they necessarily want to show up poorly. It's just that's the best they can offer at the moment. And so show them what better looks like, and find people that resonate with you, that you look up to, and ask them questions. And whether, you're asking questions of people that you look up to or the people you lead, ask questions and listen. Listen to understand, not listen to wait for your turn to talk. A lot of people, myself included in the past, I would just listen I don't want to be right because I don't know it all. I'm open, and maybe you're right. Maybe we're both right. Maybe we're both wrong. It doesn't matter about right and wrong. It just matters about moving forward together. So just having grace and respect for people is really crucial.
Yeah, you've hit on one of my pet peeves there, I must say, the listening question. Listen in order to understand, in order to further the dialogue. Don't just listen waiting for your turn to speak.
Yeah.
Or you can tell when people are doing it as well, because the eyes kind of glaze over, or they start texting, or...
Yeah, and that's respect right there. It's so disrespectful. It's I'm not trying to prove to you how many words I know, or that I can speak English or whatever. It's man, I'm obviously trying to share and connect with you. And I used to wonder, why do people always talk about the weather? It's it's hot today. It's always hot in Texas. Duh. But that's a form of connection. That's how, as humans, we've evolved for as long as we have on Earth, is connection. We both know it's hot, but that's how, just a form of connection. And so just, hey, it's hot. Sure is.
Yeah, I think weather is one of the universal forms of communication, isn't it? Everyone has it. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It might be slightly different weather, but there is weather.
That's a great point.
There's a reason why it always starts a conversation, isn't there? That's because it's the thing that we can all relate to. We can all discuss it without thinking too much. It's a great icebreaker.
Absolutely.
Even if there's no actual ice. Depends where you are.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of ice here, fortunately. But every now and then it's really terrible when we do, because we're not prepared. But
well, if it makes you feel better, we get it quite a lot, and we're still not prepared either. So there you go.
That's pretty funny. That's awesome. Yeah, it's wild here. It's like Mad Max out there. People are just driving, crashing into each other, going faster. But I lived up north in Chicago for a few years, and it's normal up there. I remember Halloween, it was 3 inches of snow. I couldn't believe it. I remember sweating on Halloween in Texas, but up there, the roads are cleared. Boom, they're professionals. They're this is like a blizzard, and they're just cruising around on their moped. No big deal. That's what we do. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're going to get it for months on end, you kind of have to. Otherwise, your whole economy grinds to a halt, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Leadership Heroes.
All right. Well, time is flying again. So we're on to the last question. And I love this question because I always get some great answers. So I'm looking forward to see what you come up with. So I called it Leadership Heroes. And the question is, now, accepting that I'm asking you to pick a human, and humans are by definition imperfect. If you had to pick a person who you would say perfectly embodies leadership, whether that be kind of alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, if you like, who would that person be and why?
That's another great question. It's like picking a favorite kid here. You know what? I think I have two simple ones, like my dad and my brother. They are both really phenomenal leaders in different areas. My dad was the leader of a company, but he passed away a number of years ago, but he was just a really influential person. And so many people came up to me at his funeral, remember, and just like, your dad was one of the most brilliant people I knew, but he was really, really kind. He always helped. He helped me a lot. I never asked for anything in return, but he just helped me because he could. And, as my dad, aged, and, I did too, growing up with him, obviously. And I saw him transform from, a very powerful kind of authoritative leader into more of a softer, kinder version of himself. And so he continually made new decisions about how he wanted to show up in the world. And that was really, really cool because people, we can change, we're not, I am this. That's always and never very dangerous words. I'm always this way. I'm never this way. And, my brother is a really cool guy too, just really kind, really stoic. Pretty much my opposite. Not that I'm not kind, but I'm not stoic. I wouldn't say that, but he's just got a great heart, but a really brilliant brain to go with it. And he just really cares about doing the right thing and really cares about just showing up in his best self. And he always joke with him, like, dude, you're born like 70 years old, just wise and mature and like had it all figured out like our whole lives. And just a really great example of how to be a human and treat other humans well. So really grateful for those two examples.
Yeah, those are really good examples. Yeah. And the best leaders are the ones who evolve, aren't they? You evolve with the times, you evolve with, the body of knowledge, I suppose you would call it. And yeah, as you say, always and never, dangerous words. I like rarely and sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Much better. Or in the past, right?
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Well, I think we're at the end. There's only really one thing left for me to say, apart from thank you, which I will do again in a minute, but that is to give you the chance to point the listeners towards your website or your podcast or anything where they can find out more about you and maybe work with you if they'd like to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for asking that. First, thank you for having me. And you guys, David is phenomenal. If you're looking for some leadership inspiration or influence, I would definitely check out David and Griffin Consulting. A powerful guy. And he's got the great combination. I just mentioned, that big heart, big brain. So he'll take you wherever you want to go. If you want some more of this, hey man, my pleasure. That's I wouldn't say if I didn't wholeheartedly believe that. But if you want some more of this, the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple is probably easiest place to find me, or Instagram, Kevin Kepple. So come on over, say hi. We love new friends. So thanks for listening this long, you guys. If you made it, y'all are awesome. We love you. So thanks again, David.
Nice one. And I'll put the links to both of those in the episode description as well, so people can find it easily. Awesome. Right. Well, Kevin, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much again for taking time out of your morning to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was a great chat. Lovely guy as well. Thank you again, Kevin, for joining me. And so many great lessons and tips there about intentional and transformational leadership. So I hope everyone has found that helpful, useful, interesting, all of the above. If you do want to get in touch with Kevin, again, I've put his links to his podcast and links to his Instagram in the episode description or the show notes, or whatever it's called, depending on the platform you're listening to. So please do reach out to him if you'd like to learn more. And if you would like to learn more about leading with integrity and the approach I've developed for leadership for new managers, you can get in touch with me as well. You can either sign up to the mailing list, or you can hit the contact button on the website and reach out to me directly. And finally, a favor to ask, if you have 5 minutes to spare, not even 5 minutes, probably only take you one, please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whichever platform it is you're listening from. Would really appreciate that. Thank you in advance for that, and I will see you next time, I hope. In the meantime, remember to be a leader, not a boss.